YouTube channel. Today, as our continuation of Appium series, today I would like to explain the Appium architecture for iOS and Android. So basically Appium work as a client server architecture and communicate as a server, and it consists of different automation code and written in different languages like Java, JavaScript, Python, and Ruby. And internally, it is using W3C WebDriver protocol to communicate with Appium server. It has predict and send or receive the HTTP server developed using the Node.js. It listens the Appium client code and communicate in the JSON format. So basically it's create a session to test send or receive the instruction in the format of JSON protocol. So for specifically iOS, we have to communicate with Android WebDriver agent, and for iOS we have XUI UI automator tool, UI automator driver. And internally it is both are Android and Appium and Selenium both is using WebDriver protocol or W3C standard protocol, call it JSON by protocol or mobile JSON by protocol. So it send the request in JSON format. Now as we discuss Appium architecture, so here you can see for Android and iOS we have to, based on the W3C protocol, we have to provide different plugins and drivers to interact with Android and iOS specifically. And Appium server function as a HTTP server, as we already talked. Receiving JSON format HTTP request from the client libraries and forwarding them to the respective platform. The server recognized these requests and started a session of automation with the relevant end devices. Okay, so whatever instructions we are sending, it's based on those instructions. It is recognize and create the session and or send it to the relevant devices and perform the actions. So server handle request different depending on the whether it's working on iOS and Android. Okay, for iOS device, so this is generic for Android and iOS. Specifically, if I talk about the Android platform, how it is interacting with. So for Android, UI automator framework that is called UI automator is a driver to interact with UI component of the application using the UI automator APIs. So again, it is send REST API request via client libraries and mobile JSON by protocol is then used to transmit these requests to the Appium server. The Appium server send the request to the targeted Android device or emulator. Again, now these instructions are translated into the format of mobile. UI automator can understand the bootstrap jar, which interpret them on the actual device or emulator. Okay, now Appium server delivers these response based on the instructions we have sent. So the bootstrap to communicate the result of the command execution back to the Appium server. So this is the basically for send the request through the Appium server and execute those in the connected devices and get the response with the help of Appium server in the same JSON format. Now the second architecture is Appium for iOS. So here because of Apple security we have to configure it differently, and here is we have to use different XCTest driver. Internally it is interacting with WebDriver agent, and it is internally calling the XCTest APIs, which is provided by the Apple or designed by the Apple. So user written code in the again the same format written the code in the transmitted into REST API request and via client libraries. Okay, now mobile JSON web protocol then use the send the queries to the Appium server. The Appium server send these requests to the targeted iOS device or emulator. By using Apple XCTest API, the WebDriver agent app interpreted these commands and translate them into the mobile friendly manner. So here once we connect the Android iOS device and done the proper configuration, then from the Xcode when we like check the or build the application, then WebDriver agent application will install on your device, and every time when we interact or send any request, first WebDriver agent will launch and then your particular application will initiate. The machine simulator carries out the commands. Okay, that so the Appium server delivers the response to the client. Again, once the execution is done, whatever send request we send it, they receive the response from the Appium server and get the response from the client server. So this is basic architecture here. So in Android there is no any dependencies, so if we can conclude that like for the Android we are using UI automated driver to, and bootstrap jar will use in both the platforms, okay, to send or to communicate, to transmit your request. And again we can write the script in any language. The Appium is working as a server for any language.